Hello everyone, it's me again, the Metaverse Explorer. We are back again with another Grape Solana interview this time. This time, guess what protocol we're having with us? We have 01 Exchange. They have been building for a long time on Solana. They had a DevNet a while ago. I showed you a tutorial of it, and now they're going to be going to Mainnet. So I thought we should get them into Grape and have a chat to them. So we have on the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see the Discord with about 33 people, and we have Ryu. On the right-hand side, you can see the 01 Exchange website, their Twitter, which they have about, I don't know, how many followers do you guys have, Rui? I forget.
I think we're like at 9,000 right now.
So yeah, slowly going up. I remember when I saw it was about 6 or 7. Now it's going up and up. So anyway, Ryu, hello. Thanks for joining us. How are you going?
I'm doing good. Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. I'm super excited. We just made some huge announcements the last few days, as you've mentioned. We have been sort of heads down building for the last few months, and so super excited to sort of come out of the coders cave and sort of reveal everything to the world.
Yeah, heads down, bumps up. That's the way I like it.
Exactly.
So before we go onto the onto 01 protocol and onto what have you guys have been building, can you tell us a bit about yourself, please? Who are you? What's your small, brief crypto story? And how did you get to 01 protocol? 01 Exchange, sorry.
Yeah, totally. So prior to sort of getting into crypto, had sort of the typical stint around sort of the tech world, the VC world, and the TradFi world, and have done a lot of sort of academic stuff as well, and then ultimately ended up sort of starting, on ETH actually initially. Was
Don't we all
toying around with sort of Web3, and was just sort of really annoyed by the UX, about how, as I'm sure everyone here has experienced, right? I just sort of with the whole sort of user experience on ETH L1 didn't really see a future for crypto, and that sort of bummed me out until actually a colleague of mine pulled me into the sort of Solana summer hackathon.
Nice.
Last year, where that was sort of the first entry point into Solana, and sort of from that we sort of just sort of once you go into Solana, you sort of can't go back. And so we ended up sort of double downing in here, ended up chatting with the Serum team, went through multiple different sort of iterations, and ultimately settled on what 01 Exchange is today. And super excited to sort of talk more about it, and sort of to give this sort of last piece of background information on the team. Like everyone comes from, or not everyone, but we have folks from really TradFi, from some of the big banks in the States. We have a lot of people from academia, especially in like physics and math research, and so super academic and math and finance focused team.
Very good.
And of course,
I was going to say, I love a very well-rounded team. You have engineers and mathematicians, academia people. Do you have people based in the blockchain as well? People crypto native that can do development work as well for you? You'd have to.
Yeah. So like, actually, like the interesting thing there, and I think the thesis for the entire team here is like, I think like crypto, at least from the dev side, is like not it's super daunting initially when you look at it, and it does require certain activation energy on the developer side. But like as soon as you like dive into the rabbit hole, it's sort of, you get used to it really quickly, and especially when you're really familiar with previous sort of tech stacks and experience developing, you get used to it super quickly, and you get the hang of it.
Right on. Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'm not a programmer, but if you say you get the hang of it, I'm good with that. But what I do know is that Rust is apparently difficult to code in. But once again, I have no idea.
Yeah. So there we were pretty fortunate enough to bring on someone who's actually really seasoned in Rust and is a sort of Rust native. And sort of actually the funny story behind the entire team is like we actually all used to go to the same high school, and so we all know each other like super
nice.
super well. And so, yeah, I mean, super lucky to have known sort of these people and sort of started 0 1 together.
Right on, awesome. That's a good segue into 0 1 Exchange. So, like we said, you guys have been building. You've had a DevNet out a couple of months ago after your hackathon. Now you'll be going to Mainnet. So, can you give us a brief summary of what 0 1 Exchange is for those of us that aren't too sure and we want to find out more?
Yeah, so like the sort of, the general picture for 0 1 exchanges, we're a fully decentralized derivatives exchange that's going to, on Mainnet, offer perpetual futures and then offer power perpetuals, which I'm sure you've heard of and seen around DeFi Twitter, and if you haven't, that's totally cool as well. Like I'm sure we're going to talk a bit about that. But essentially, like fully decentralized from top to bottom derivatives exchange built on top of Serum and Solana. We're going to be supporting cross collateral and cross margin. Essentially, like the goal of 0 1 exchange is to really take all the incredible features that a centralized exchange offers and essentially decentralize everything.
Right on. So you mentioned a few things there that brings me to mind of some other protocols in Solana that are doing this. And we'll get to your competition a bit later, but are we kind of looking at something at what Mango Markets does at the moment where they can give you perpetuals?
Yeah, totally. So I think Mango is definitely sort of the OG when it comes to sort of perps. We definitely, we've traded on Mango. We have huge respect for the team. I think like for us, really, it comes down to being sort of more dedicated platform for derivatives. I know Mango does, spot margin trading, and for us, like the focus is on building infra that's scalable specifically for derivatives. That's why we're sort of pushing the limits even more with power perpetuals, which is sort of, like the way I like to think about it is like, you have your sort of traditional perpetual futures, and then power perpetuals becomes this even more exotic product, but also in a way very elegant and a very simple way to start getting into instruments that have similar properties to options. And so, I know a lot of people, especially when we want to first get into options, it's a very daunting world. And actually power perpetuals make that sort of transition a lot. Oh, sorry, what'd you say?
It makes it worse for the retail person. They barely understand perpetuals. Now there's something else on top of it. There's power perpetuals.
Yeah. So what I was getting to is that, like the way I see it is like, level 1 is like your perpetual futures in terms of trying to understand, and then maybe like trying to understand options, it's maybe like level 3, 4, right? But I would actually argue that maybe, power perpetuals is maybe actually around like level 2 or 3.
Oh, interesting.
In terms of intuitiveness, or maybe like it might be an easier like mental model to sort of understand as an instrument, but we can sort of dive deeper into that later. But I think like for us, like 0 1 exchange we've really focused on sort of building a protocol that's super scalable, and so we'll be able to offer up to like 50 different tokens that you can collateralize with, right? And we'll be able to sort of push out up to 100 different derivative markets very quickly.
This is what's really got me interested here. So I'll be able to use any of my tokens. So I'm speaking from a retail perspective. I've got whatever token shitcoin that I have, and I want to collateralize it. I will be able to do this now. I should be able to use this on your protocol. Is this going to be coming out immediately on Mainnet, or this is later on down the line? What kind of tokens you guys starting with on Mainnet?
Yeah, totally. So that's a great question. So what you're referring to there is the concept of sort of cross collateral, right?
Yep.
What that essentially means is like, you can use any different tokens that are of course supported by the exchange to collateralize your various trading positions.
Yeah. I don't want to sell it yet. It might just moon. So I want to at least utilize that capital I have there and get something and do something else with it.
Exactly. So it's super capital efficient, right? In the sense that like if you want to go trade, but you're holding your assets are in all sorts of different tokens, you obviously don't want to sell them into like USDC and lose that exposure, right? Assuming you're holding, you want to hold those tokens. And so to answer your question on sort of, what are some of the tokens that we're going to start out with, and then how that sort of progression is going to go, it's definitely going to be a progressive rollout, right? Like, we're not going to come out and support all 50 collaterals at the same time. I think it's going to be iterative. Exactly. I think it's going to be iterative as well, right? Like, depending on sort of what the community wants, and what the community wants to sort of see as supported collateral. Like, that's sort of how we're going to initially roll it out. But the sort of main tokens are certainly going to be there, right? USDC, USDT,
of course,
SOL, BTC, ETH. Yeah, it's essentially like the sort of foundational tokens. And then when it comes to some more, whether that's like Serum or even Cope or some of these other more like niche tokens, those will be more iterative for sure.
Right on. So that kind of leads me to a side question that I was going to have. So eventually, it's possible that the Grape community might come to 01 protocol, a 01 exchange, and say, hey, we want to use the Grape token as collateral. We'll just have to go through the processes. So there is a possibility of that actually happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I will add like an asterisk there, right? Like, the way sort of most exchanges, the way 01 exchange sort of balances the risk with a lot of these more volatile tokens is you have this factor that's called the collateral weight, which is essentially just a function of how volatile those tokens are. And so, for instance, for stable coins, the weight is just going to be 100%, meaning that if I deposit like one USDC, that one USDC is going to essentially like count as one USDC when it comes to collateral for positions. And contrast this to maybe something like Shiba Inu, right? That's like super, super volatile. The weight for Shiba Inu might be at like less than 100%, right? And so what that means is like that gives a bit of a buffer ground for the protocol's insurance fund, and the protocol and the network itself, so that in case of like severe volatility, you still have that like buffer to play around with, right?
Yeah, man, I wouldn't want to get liquidated if I use my tokens as collateral. So and
Exactly.
I totally get what you're saying about having a buffer. Okay, cool. So let's shift the conversation a bit. So we were talking about your Power Perpetuals. I want to talk about the Power Perpetuals first, and I want to look at other protocols in crypto, or specifically in Solana, that are offering what you guys are doing at the moment. So can you please give me a very retail breakdown of what a perpetual is, and then what a Power Perpetual is, and then maybe a Squall as well?
Yeah, totally. Cool. So so like, I guess like the easiest way to think about sort of what a perp is essentially sort of, you're able, if you go sort of long on a perp, right, you're essentially placing a bet that whatever underlying asset you're longing is going to increase in price, right? And the nice thing about perpetual futures, and futures in general as a derivative class, is that you can take on this concept called leverage, which essentially allows you to do a lot more with the capital that you own, right? So let's sort of contrast like perpetual futures to like regular spot, right? So in a typical like spot market, like if I buy one BTC, and the price of BTC increases by, let's say, like $10, I will make like $10 in profit, right?
Yep.
Contrast this to like a perpetual future, and then let's say I go, I take on leverage. In this case, like if the price of BTC increases by like $10 and I'm like twice leveraged, right? That means like for the money that I put in, I'm gonna gain like twice as much essentially, right? And so when BTC increases by $10, I'm going to be increasing my position by 20, right?
Yep,
and so that's the nice thing about leverage. But the flip side is you're obviously losing a lot more as well, right? Like there's no such thing as like free like opportunity and gain without any risk.
Yeah, man,
right?
You're trying to get all that gains, you have to be prepared to lose if it goes down.
Exactly. And so I think would be like the really the really easy way of thinking about perps, right? It's just a way for you to sort of go long or go short on a certain underlying asset and take on leverage when doing that. And this sort of, you've probably heard of the funding rate. That's essentially the mechanism by which people, the market sort of corrects, or not corrects, but like rebalances the price of the perp so that it actually tracks the price of the underlying asset. Because you obviously don't, you don't want people to just be longing, the price to the moon, and then no one's going to be shorting it and whatnot. Then the instrument just doesn't work anymore, right? And so you need something to sort of tie this derivative back to the original asset, right, which is the underlying. And so the way you do that is through this thing called a funding payment, right? And so and let me know if like,
sorry, you go.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, let me know if any of this like doesn't make sense.
No, it makes sense. Like, and I'm aware of some of the other protocols that are taking advantage of this funding premium, where we can. I think Katana and Chess Finance, all of them doing this kind of call option vaults and all of this sort of stuff. All super interesting and slightly over my head, but I use the products anyway because I'm a degen. So I understand perpetuals. I understand the funding rate. Yeah, aren't we all? I understand the funding rate and the perps in general. Can you tell us what power perpetuals are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So the easiest way to think about power perps is that the sort of the funding rate in a traditional perpetual futures is just the market price of your perp minus this sort of the index price of the underlying asset, right? For a power perp, what happens is that your derivative or your power perpetual is actually tracking the some power of the underlying asset, right? And this power can either be like a squared power, a cube power, or even like a power to the 5 or 6, as wild as it can get, right? But for simplicity, let's just take a squared power, right? So like some underlying squared, right? And so essentially what that means is like if let's say the price of Solana like doubles, then the price of the power perp is going to quadruple, right? So essentially squared, right? And so if the price of Sol 3x's, then the price of the power perp is going to 9x, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's like the very like intuitive way of thinking about it, right? And so, but like, what does that like mean in practice, right? Like, what is like a perp that like tracks like the squared price of an underlying mean in practice? Well, like like the easiest way to think about that is like if you think about the payout graph of a regular futures or even a regular like spot position, it's a linear function, right? And what I mean by linear is like, okay, like if the price increases by like $10, then the price of the derivative is always going to increase by $10 or $20 if you're 2x leverage. So it's always going to increase by the same sort of slope, right? So like for every like X percentage of change in the underlying asset, you'll always get the same like percentage of change in the derivative, right?
Yeah.
But in the case of in the case of this squared product, you have this curve. You have this function that's essentially like a curve, right? And so what this means is you have kind of this you have this fancy word that people float around that called convexity, right? And this is something you typically find in options, and this is one of the reasons that make options so attractive is because they have this like fancy thing called convexity, which really just means that if the price moves in your favor, then you're going to make a lot more than if the price moves against you, right? And you can sort of see that if you just draw out the sort of curve, the sort of exponential curve.
Yeah, it just looks like an exponential curve going up to the right. That's what I see it as.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess like, yeah, that's like that's an easy sort of mental model to think about it, right? Um like essentially the power perp is just tracking the underlying squared, and what that allows the trader to gain exposure to is what we like to say like and what Dave White refers to in his paper as global like option like exposure. And the reason it's option like is because of this sort of convex payout and convex property, right? Where if the price moves in your favor, then the price then you're gaining a lot more than what you're losing if the price moves against you, right?
This I have an idea. I think I understand what you're saying, and I think I understand the power perps. Have you guys trialed this at all? Are there any protocols that have actually done this before? Or are you guys doing this for the first time?
Yeah. So we're not the people who
invented
invented this. Like all that credit goes
on
to
chain.
Oh, sorry, what?
So like I know you guys probably wouldn't have invented it, but on chain, like in like on the blockchain, you guys would have been the first people. Or is DYDX doing this, for example?
No. So DYDX is not. But actually, yeah. So the people behind this, right, like the Paradigm team and the Opine team, are the ones who've actually pioneered this. And so Opine, if you guys don't know, is an options protocol on Ethereum. I think layer 1.
Oh, Open. Yeah, I know them.
Yeah. Oh, is it Open?
I say Open. OPYN.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but essentially, yeah. But they're doing it in a unique way. So they're actually composing over Uniswap v3, and you really don't have any other choices when you're on Ethereum layer 1, right? Because of transaction speeds and transaction costs, you kind of have to go the AMM/VMM route when building essentially perps or derivatives, right? But what we can do on Solana, thanks to our partners at Serum that we're working super closely with, of course, is we're able to sort of offer the first ever power perps on a fully on-chain and decentralized order book, which is a lot more powerful for traders, right? Because the order book gives a lot more flexibility, both on the market making side, but also on the trading side, right? You don't have this issue, or not as apparent issue of price slippage. You're able to actually parameterize your trades and be a lot more granular with how you decide to trade. And so so in that sense, we're like super excited to be the first ones to push forward the order book based perps and power perps. But as for like power perps in general, like Opine, of course, did it first on ETH on the AMM, and I think they launched like last week or something.
Yeah,
so it's all sort of coming together like really quickly.
I remember this, and that's why when you said their names, like, oh, I remember them doing something like this. And if you just have a look in the live questions chat, this is just a diagram that I just found from Open, and they kind of give us what you're describing here in the top left hand section, which is the long square squeeth, which they call it square ETH, but in our sense, we're doing squared Solana, which is Squall.
Exactly. Yep, Squall. Which, in my opinion, sounds a lot nicer.
I think that's much cooler than, to be honest. Sounds like a bird or something. Squall. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, okay, awesome. So you guys have been trying to bring this to Solana, and how has it been going for Open so far? Have they been launched for a while? Is there anything we can learn from them?
So I think they launched like last week.
So not enough time, really.
Definitely not enough time to sort of
to take any learnings from them.
Yeah, but you can already look at trends in terms of like the funding rate. I think it's around like 0.6% right now, and so I think like it's certainly like heading in the right direction. With sort of how people have been taking it in, and I think with the sort of advent of a lot of these structured products and passive vault protocols, and a lot of them we're actually working super closely with. We're going to see a lot of composing on top of Power Perps, right? Because I think like for most of us, I think we're probably still going to interact with Power Perps through maybe like a second layer like vault strategy
item,
rather than directly, right?
Like how,
and I think that this is
sorry to interrupt, like how Katana and Tap Finance and Chess Finance and all the other ones interact on top of Psi Options, which is an options contract.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I think like there's a lot of promise there, right? Because the Power Perps can actually provide essentially a very natural way to hedge impermanent loss, which is something that people have been trying to do. Yeah,
it plagues us. Impermanent loss is the
it's,
bane of our existence.
Exactly. Like people have been trying to figure out. I mean, there's different hedge it with regular options and other instruments, but it's not perfect, right? With powers, it makes it a lot easier, right? Because I mean, just intuitively, you can already get a sense of like how the curves are pretty similar, right? And so like the whole idea behind hedging is that you don't want to be exposed to sort of the various price movements of the underlying that will cause you to sort of take on a position in one way or the other. And so with Power Perps, you'll be able to not only hedge out impermanent loss in a lot of these XYK pools, but you'll also be able to hedge out regular options, right? And so regular options, which are typically like not the most straightforward thing to hedge out because they're convex instruments, right? Now you have this Power Perp, which is also convex and shares similar properties that you can use to essentially, I say the word hedge out a lot, but it's like you can think of it as like neutralizing the other sort of the other position, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm excited to use this because I myself am I would come to you to tell me how I can use this to hedge against my impermanent loss.
Yeah, totally.
And you guys need to have video tutorials on this, how to do this, because this is like a really powerful tool, I feel. And you guys would understand even more how more powerful it is. And I'm looking at your documentation here, and so the Power Perpetuals are not the only thing that you guys offer. You do offer yield-bearing deposits as well, and I'm very interested in this. The whole lending and borrowing market has been, kind of taking off. Solend is leading at the moment with the SLND token. So your yield-bearing deposits, and you guys say all deposits on 01 accrue passive APY through algorithmic borrow lending markets. Can you tell me if this is like an in-house kind of thing you guys are doing, or all of our tokens are automatically deposited to like Solend and then it comes back? Is that what's happening there?
Yeah, so right now, like it's all sort of in-house, and so 01 has its own sort of liquidity pool, which so whenever someone whenever you deposit collateral to trade, that collateral is automatically earning APY through this liquidity pool, right? And so that makes your capital super efficient, right? Because if you think about it, like traditionally, what you would do is you would deposit your collateral to trade, but that collateral is just sitting there, right? It's not really doing anything. And so now you're both, trading and earning P&L, but your collateral is also passively increasing APY there. And the way I like to think about it is like 01 is we're working with a lot of liquidity providers and market makers to actually provide deep liquidity on the books, and those are the people who are going to be taking on a lot of the borrow volume, right? And so it's only natural that a lot of this sort of borrow lending volume is going to be sort of funneled through this entire through the entire exchange, essentially, right? Because it's already a spot where a lot of the big sort of traders and market makers are going to be. It's only natural for them to take on borrow directly from there as well.
I think you understated it a little bit. You have a few partners. You're talking about Alameda Research and Multicoin Capital. Are there people that are bigger than them? No, they're like the biggest.
So we're actually we're actually gonna release an announcement on that fairly soon. It's gonna be a PR announcement a few days before we launch, and so definitely look out for that. That's unfortunately alpha. I cannot spill in tonight.
That's okay, man. That's okay. I'm just reading. It's from the article that you guys published not long ago. So, well, yeah, and it does say full announcement in a separate article coming soon. So, yeah, I want to see who else is backing you guys. And if you had 15,000 users at your DevNet, that's pretty good. And I want to move the conversation now to, I guess, the like a token. You guys have Mango Markets have their own token. You can trade perpetuals there. Are you guys planning to have a 0.1 token? You do already have like an NFT collection going on, so you guys are not strangers to releasing stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think it's certainly something that is top of mind. I mean, I think like for any DeFi protocol, like we want to decentralize as soon as possible, right? This is something that we think a lot about, and we want to make it perfect, because it's you can't repeat a token launch like twice.
That's right.
And so we're spending a lot of time just making sure that everything lines up well, and that the token aligns incentives for traders, early users, makers, the team, other supporters, and other folks who are in one way or the other involved and invested into the network. We want to make sure that we go down this decentralized path as best as possible, right? We're looking at sort of how other folks have done it, how DEXs has done it, how other similar protocols have done it, and we're really this is a super exciting topic to talk about, but we also want to be super meticulous about how we plan this and how we roll this out.
Of course, I fully understand that. Anyone and his dog can release a token and it's just there on Solana. You need an actual great utility and a great project, a great team behind them, and you have all your ducks aligned before you should actually release it. And you guys are having a working product before you have a token, which is like one above everyone else in the space, I think.
Yeah, like this is like we're definitely not trying to and I think it makes sense, right? Like you want to have a product. You want people to be here for the product and not for the token. We want the token to be really there for people who are invested, but not in the financial invested definition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so it's important for us to build a product first, and the token should be a complementary thing that helps us. Essentially like adding fuel to the fire, right? But like we want the product, that fire, to grow first.
Yeah, makes sense. The same as DYDX. People were trading on DYDX for a long time before they had their token, and then people were even more inflamed with the fire. So I think that's a route that you guys are going down, and I think it's a really good route, to be honest.
Yeah, hopefully.
I think so. So we did have a question, rerun. That was your question there, native token. And they said, they did say, yeah, it's in the planning. So keep an eye out. If there's anyone else, there's 44 people in the audience. If you have a question, just post it in the live questions channel right above us. So we'll keep going for a while until we can get some questions. Otherwise, we might start closing off in about 10-15 minutes. So let's talk about next steps for you guys, Rue. So you're releasing your mainnet on 27th with a big announcement with investors and maybe backers behind you guys coming before the announcement. What should we expect? There'll be a UI that we can interact with on 0.1 exchange on the website. We might be able to start doing some power perpetuals, or we're just going to be doing perpetuals first.
Yeah, no, those are great questions. So
what's the timeline? What's happening first?
Definitely gonna have a UI, right?
Yeah, good. We need that.
Don't expect you guys to plug in through some terminal or anything. We're actually pretty proud of our UI. I think it's decent, and so hopefully people will appreciate it.
Yeah, we tried
I
your
know
DevNet UI. It was pretty good, and I see the Mainnet coming soon UI. That looks pretty nice as well. So I have high expectations, man. Don't let me down.
I know that's never good to set expectations too high. But anyhow, so gonna have an UI. Hopefully things should be pretty seamless. We've been stress testing things in the back end up until launch, and so should be good. And so in terms of next steps, like definitely gonna have deep liquidity on perpetual books on day one. In terms of power perps, right? Like this is still a
In the works.
very, very new instrument, and we're actually a lot of the sort of market makers are onboarding sort of as we speak and running their risk engines on powers right now. Ideally, we would be able to launch powers at the same time as our main launch, or maybe a few days later, but probably realistically maybe 1 or 2 weeks after perps. And so that's probably the realistic timeline, but I'm definitely trying to ship quickly and sort of bring these super exciting instruments to the world as quick, but also as sort of
safe as you can,
responsible as possible. Yeah.
Do you guys have auditors behind you at all?
Yeah, so the way we're sort of approaching auditing right now is we're working a lot with the sort of the Serum team and the core dev team across various different Solana protocols, because let's be honest, like there's or at least for other Solana devs who probably know this, there are honestly no better auditors and people who
Solana
understand
themselves,
Solana and Anchor than Solana devs ourselves. Nothing against auditors. Like I think there are some really, really solid auditors out there. And so sort of our plan is to sort of have this parallel Solana founder / dev Serum team audit, and then also have this parallel auditing firm audit. But we certainly don't want to only count on one, right?
No, it's good to get a diverse opinion on, especially in Solana. It's such people just coming in here experimenting with all this stuff we don't really know until something happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a long road. It's a really hard road, but if you guys go down the right path, make the right decisions, it should turn out really well. And 2 weeks after you're launching for Power Perps is actually a lot sooner than I was expecting. I was thinking maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, that sort of thing, for you guys to actually get your feet down on mainnet and keep going after that.
Oh yeah, essentially all the development work done, it really comes down to trading and market making at this point. And so that's kind of sort of what we're working through, and just sort of making sure everything makes sense on the mathematics side for the traders, and so at which point we'll be ready to sort of roll this out for folks.
Right on, sounds good. We do have a hand raised. Enthusiast, you have your hand raised. I'm going to invite you to the stage, and in the meantime I'll check if there's anyone else in live questions. Enthusiast, you will see a green bar above your screen. If you are here, then come up stage. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Ryu here? How do you plan to spread information about 01 Exchange in order to attract new users? You do have a marketing campaign coming soon with an announcement. Who's head of your marketing
totally.
at the
moment? So we've been we've been working with a lot of different folks on the marketing community side. You guys have probably seen sort of our Ali has been contributing a lot on the Twitter side for us. But actually the core team is super. We're all engineers actually. And so one of the sort of big focuses moving past mainnet is we're going to be looking for dedicated community and marketing folks. And so if anyone knows anyone really good, please do refer them our way. But in terms of marketing in general, we do have a fairly large trading competition in the works that we're going to be partnering with some pretty big names And
what
so
competition?
we're
Sorry,
pretty.
a train competition.
Oh yeah, a trading competition.
Trading.
Yeah. So we're actually going to be partnering with some pretty big names for this competition. And we have sort of the hope is like that we'll be able to bring in a lot of not only Solana native and Solana traders, but we'll be able to sort of attract a lot of cross-chain ETH folks, AVAX people onto Solana and show them just how superior Solana is.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, don't you also want the actual people outside of Solana, outside of crypto, the people who actually trade perpetuals or power perpetuals in their real life day job? Is that a kind of a target audience that you're after as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think like for us, like at the end of the day, really like our like the reason we set out to build 0 was like how do we take this centralized exchange like world and decentralize it from top to bottom and offer this to the world. And so certainly not this is certainly not a Solana exclusive thing, but the reason we decided to build on Solana is because Solana is able to, or Solana is in my opinion like one of, if not the only chain that can do
afford
this,
the functionality
right?
for you to do it.
Exactly. And so so the ultimate end game is like through Solana, through Serum, essentially decentralize this entire centralized exchange stack, right? And like we're that's sort of what we're aiming for.
Awesome. And I think once you get to that stage where people interact with Power Perpetuals, they don't even know it's happening on chain. They don't have to keep a wallet or anything. That's when it starts hitting the golden spot. That's where we start getting mainstream adoption.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll start wrapping up a little bit. Just a reminder for all the 44 audience members, we do have Barn Dogs and Metaverse Explorer and Sixin next up on stage with Solana Gaming Saturdays. But we'll start wrapping up this interview, Rue. We'll talk about Solana in general. What kind of tools have been built for you so far that have worked really well? And is there anything in Solana that's missing for you? So I know you might be having a token and there might be governance, which means you might be using realms. This is something you might be doing. Any other tools you think are missing in Solana that we really need to develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Solana has grown like
immensely.
A lot since it started, right? So if you remember, like I mentioned how I started at my entry point into Solana was last summer, and there wasn't the Anchor development library that didn't exist. Pith was pretty bare bones. It was on Mainnet. A lot of the sort of infra that we take for granted today did not exist, and it's crazy how quickly things have developed.
That's
and so
1 year, man. That's 1 year. I'm excited for the next 3 years.
Yeah. So like keeping that in mind, right? I think like a lot of the core infra that we're building on, Serum, Pith, these have been in the works for a long time. We've been partnering them with throughout this entire journey, pretty much. I think like in terms of maybe dev and technical side, for the devs in the chat out there, you probably understand my feeling when I say like there probably like needs to be better like debugging tools. But like other than that, really like I think like things are sort of going in the right way, especially in terms of infra. And there's just so many new things launching every day that it's no better time to be in this space and in Solana than right now.
Yeah, I feel you the same way, man. And that's why I'm up here. I'm doing the Solana interviews, trying to get you to know the protocols that might be really worthwhile getting to know. We do have a question from Bugimator. Will there be an NFT market on the platforms? So 01 Exchange already has NFTs out. Can you talk to us a little bit about your NFTs actually that you released?
Yeah, totally. So we actually didn't fully release the entire collection yet. Funnily enough, so we still have a few of those that we're reserving for the mainnet folks, but essentially we had sort of released a collection of NFT robots that we called bytes when we launched the DevNet.
Yep.
And at that point it was I remember that was also the time when there was the huge like Solana NFT collections craze and stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
That was like a crazy time. But yeah, so we had launched that to sort of reward folks who had helped us during the DevNet. And then over the last few weeks, we've been rewarding some of our sort of longer term supporters, both on Discord as well as on Twitter. And I think like, we alluded to this at the start, but like, the future is going to be some form of like NFT and DeFi like integrated ecosystem, right? And so we strongly believe in that. And so I don't want to leak this alpha right now, but there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of exciting sort of opportunities to both like earn NFTs and also trade them on 0-1. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say. For now.
That's all good, man. No problems at all. We'll find out very, very soon once it comes on Mainnet and once you give us the article. But at least I know of you guys now, and we've got some nearly 50 people listening here who are keeping their eye right on you. So we'll start wrapping up. Ryu, do you have any last minute comments that you want to share with anyone in the audience, anyone listening on YouTube? Thank you very much. Any last minute questions from the audience, please? Or Ryu, any comments?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like, yeah, thanks so much for having me and this has been super fun. For anyone who's listening and who has questions either about 0-1, perpetual futures, power perps, cross collateral, cross margin, trading, what have you, please reach out. Where we read our Twitter DMs. And we also read our Discord messages. And so please reach out. Yeah.
Right on, man. And I've posted all of the major links in the live chat, so anyone in the comments can go and have a look. This is looking at the 0-1 website, their Twitter, and the Medium article which they recently released. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, all good, man. We do have a question from Viktorov. I wonder, I'll see if he comes up. And no, he's not being coming up. Okay, that's all good. We'll end it here, gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Oh no, here he is. Victor, hello.
Hello, Sir.
Hello.
Hey.
Do you have a question?
Hello.
Hello. Hey.
All right, I'm sorry, mate. We might have to move on from this. Oh, good.
Love that.
Love that, yeah. There's no other questions at the moment. So, Ryu, thank you very much once again for coming. Thank you, everyone on YouTube, for watching. You can find the links to 0-1 Exchange in the links down below. Subscribe for me. Ryu, thank you once again, man.
No, thank you.
All right, and we are out.